Ed, it's great to meet you here again, but 3,000 miles from our respective homes.
Yes,
But it's awesome to be at IBM Think Conference.
in Boston,
And
live from
in
Boston.
Boston,
I think when people are watching this, will be recorded. But yeah,
Oh, it's live from Boston. Obviously, whenever we are recording, it's live. So that's the redundancy.
well, you never know. It could be AI generated.
Could be AI generated. Okay, I'm sure that my AI version is better than what I am.
We need to do at least one of these as an AI generated.
Oh, it'll be great, man.
Yes.
It'll be absolutely awesome. The better version of Anant.
Yeah.
So this is obviously your first think, and for our audience, we have done one of these before, and we hope to make it a regular practice. And not clear whether it works for all our audience, but we would actually enjoy talking to each other and getting some guests.
Yep.
So in this first think, I know that the Arvind's keynote was a bit too early for you. You're not an early morning person.
Yeah, I did.
But I'm sure you
Yeah.
brushed up on what the key announcements were. What struck you?
So, I mean, I think that the most pervasive thing was just seeing agents front and center, and really blown away at the level that these have actually been deployed within IBM. So, actually seeing the benefits from this. But I think overall that was a big deal. I really, of course, it was great to see Hashi front and center. I know that was a long time coming, and I think that was great to see how it's part of the technology strategy, and then, of course, I was very happy to have an opportunity to preview some of the DataStax stuff for down in the Think Theater as well. So, looking forward to being able to keep doing that as we bring DataStax into the fold.
Awesome. Because you didn't wake up early enough, DataStax actually made it into one of the
did.
slides
We
in Arvind's keynote.
Yeah.
So that was absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what struck me though. I mean, obviously IBM is a fantastic enterprise company, and obviously AI is really, really important. And IBM, I think, as you learn more, is doing, obviously IBM can do more, but is doing some really, really good cutting edge stuff for our clients. But actually what struck me was what came near the end of the presentation, which was on quantum. And
Yeah.
I've always, quantum is one thing. I mean, I kind of understand technology and I kind of understand physics, but kind of putting the two together, I don't understand it at all. And so I've been kind of brushing up on Grover's algorithms and others, but it was really, really interesting to see Arvind make some bold predictions that in the next 4 or 5 years, quantum will actually have a material impact on the things that they're doing. And that's the kind of thing that you'll discover that at IBM, and we're able to kind of make some good bold bets
Yeah.
and stick with them, because some of these require really, really long-term investments. Now, of course, in the world of AI, long-term is clear, the vector is clear, right? But the short-term, there are like phenomenal ups and downs. This is hot and that's hot and everything else. And so let's discuss a bit about what's hot this week, Ed.
Yeah, so a couple of interesting things. We saw Windsurf, of course, becoming part of OpenAI, which was a interesting event. Although it had been reported on for I think 3 or 4 weeks now. But,
Yes.
but was confirmed and concluded this week, I guess. And so that's a pretty exciting development. And I think it's a reflection of the fact that we've seen that where a lot of the material impact in the near term for many organizations has been in accelerating their software development. So this is an area, obviously, you and I spend lots of time talking about, and so that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's like the model providers are in some way, shape, or form, whether you want to call it moving upstream or moving into the application space and others, but understanding that models by themselves are a very, very important ingredient, but there's a big gap between how models get applied to affect people, in this case, people being software developers like you and me, approximately like you and me, right? And therefore, that kind of application gap between what the models can do and what people actually touch and feel is an important gap to be covered, right? And that's why, for example, even in IBM, we feel that if you look at kind of our Watson X Orchestrate announcement, the idea really was not to kind of focus inordinate amount on the models that are powering it, but really how it's affecting business process in others.
Well, I think that's exactly right. I think that we are getting to the point where the model itself is a resource, and it is the applications that are getting built on top of it. And that's part of why, so as I said earlier, the fact agents front and center, because agents are, in a very sort of expansive use of the term, really the new form of applications, that this new form of compute and the software of the model processes. And so seeing this activity, seeing where the model providers are going in terms of moving upstream and looking at their, at their various killer apps, is in some ways it's sort of history repeating itself. But I think it shows that I think we are turning that corner where value is being captured by these applications. There's a lot of the term that people are using right now is calling these wrappers, right? And actually they've been using that term for a couple of years now. And back in 23, you had people going and saying, oh, there's no moat to that. There's it's just prompts, right? It's just context preparation. And
In fact, it is feeding data into OpenAI and Claude for them to actually get better.
Yeah. But I think I think that that's true, and I think that virtuous cycle never goes away. In fact, it proceeds faster. But I also do think that we're at the point where, with the capital investments and the size of the models, that we now have to be able to put them to work. I mean, it's like, it's like in the early days of cloud, you needed a healthy ecosystem of companies that were building, their online presences and launching SaaS applications and so on to justify the build out of cloud. And so the same thing now is happening in the model space. These wrapper companies, and again, that's the interesting thing, and this has been written and blogged about, is that 2 years ago, you say, oh, the wrapper is it's not defensible, there's no value, and now, of course, what we see with Windsurf is, it's like, well, actually,
Every 3 billion words.
exactly, come up with 3 billion reasons why it's
If you count in dollars, if you count in cents, it's 300 billion. Okay.
There you go.
So one of the observations that I have is that, and we'll come to kind of the second deeply interesting topic in a minute, but one of the observations that I have is that all of these applications are not kind of monomodal applications. Okay. So if you kind of listen to either Cursor or Windsurf, they take pains to describe the fact that yes, they've kind of configured the application well.
Yes.
But they've got kind of an ensemble of models, and different models fit the job, right? And I think this is another something, not to be kind of a shameless plug of IBM's, but I will be. The IBM has consistently believed that one size doesn't fit all, and we have kind of put a lot of emphasis on sometimes, or for a large number of times, smaller fit-for-purpose models.
Oh, absolutely.
Are fantastic. Now, it may turn out that kind of very broad reasoning and knowledge things, you need kind of frontier models. But for a lot of, for example, code completion tasks or financial tasks or spreadsheet tasks or business intelligence tasks, you can actually do with smaller models. And what I'm learning is that these applications that are being built that are really, really high value, actually work on an ensemble of models below?
Oh, I think that there's no question. I think that we're seeing that in every domain where, where you're building an agentic application around that. I mean, even, and the coding space is ends up being a great example of some of these design patterns, because they all do that. Whether you're talking about Cursor, Windsurf, even Claude Code itself, spreads its calls between Sonnet and Haiku and these others, and when you start adding the domain specific models, and for that matter, and we see this quite a bit. A lot of the fine tuned models for specific company data sets and all of that. You begin to see that you do need this ensemble of models. You need to be able to broker this for fitness for purpose, and also just the economics, because that is the new currency. It's tokens. As you saw at the beginning of Jensen's keynote a few months back. We're in absolute, yeah, and that's my shorthand now is tokens equals dollars, right? Like you need to follow the tokens.
Token equals some milli dollars, but yes, absolutely. Hey, what are switch topics? You and I have been in I've learned a lot from you. Hopefully you've learned one or two things from me, but I've learned a lot from you in the world of APIs and middleware. And I was just kind of pondering a bit. I've started to use Anthropic's computer use model. And I find it to be pretty effective when I give it kind of a high-level task for it to kind of navigate the websites and click the buttons and do the right thing. And presumably, OpenAI's operator does the similar thing. And that got me thinking. And obviously, we've been talking a bit about this. So in the world of APIs, we always felt that APIs needed to be fit for purpose for the applications. Jacobson and others had talked about at Netflix how they had kind of created this domain APIs and experience APIs and everything else like that. So is there a world in which kind of new interfaces will be designed for agents, or the opposite point of view would be that, look, the interfaces that have been designed for humans, the agents will be able to operate against, and therefore you don't really need to invent something new, okay? And what works for either humans, in this case UX and buttons, or what has been built for applications is good enough. So what do you think, as agents become more and more important in our ecosystem, will the interfaces of the software systems change, or whatever exists today will work very well in this new world?
I mean, it's an awesome question, and I've observed the same thing. And, what I do know is that the models work best where there is some form of semantic richness around what you're asking the model to do in terms of an interface. Actually, it's probably true literally for anything you're asking the model to do from a Q&A standpoint as well. But the opportunity with APIs has always been around, structure and semantics, right? Predictable, repeatable structure. That's where our contract definitions come from. And there's been various approaches, and whether we look at GraphQL, or we look at REST, or we look at the previous generation. But the other important part of that was sort of what were the affordances that those different API methods gave you for really providing the model with some insight on how that API is used, in particular in relation to other APIs in the completion of some task, and then the relationship of the data and so on in relation to other things that are part of the entity or object model of the application or system that's being surfaced. And that's a mouthful of stuff, but basically what it is just the model, the model needs to be able to reason around what it's seeing. Now, computer use models are, fantastic. And of course, in terms of being able to go and being used for things like RPA, robotic process automation, and so on, where you've got an application that, existing application that you maybe have no APIs for or even connectors for. It's a good approach, and I think we'll see things particularly on the desktop, we'll see a lot of activity around that. But the more accuracy comes from cleaner APIs with richer semantics, better documentation, more logical structure, more logical relationship between the entities returned in the case of a GraphQL type of interface, or more exposure of actions and sequences in the case of a hypermedia interface. Like, the more that you can express, the better and more accurate the model is going to be able to do. And so what I can say is that if you want your agent to be able to operate more efficiently, perhaps being able to use smaller, less resource-intensive models in a more accurate way, more predictable outcomes, better API design is just common sense.
Awesome.
I went very long. I'm sorry.
Listen. Some of the topics that we're discussing don't necessarily take for short answers, and none of us is known for giving short answers on anything.
This is an area that you and I, from API design standpoint, have spent years on. So
but guess what? I went and actually, so there's a raging debate within IBM. I've always been a proponent of, look, good, clean API design, perhaps expressed as GraphQL, is what's needed, and BFS, backend for front ends.
Yes,
you kind of propose, but there are a kind of equal number of people within IBM who say, look, in this world of really, really smart models, you can basically lay some, pardon my expression, turds out, and will actually clean it up and do the right thing. So in the true spirit of leveraging AI, I went and asked Claude, would you actually want good APIs or kind of whatever domain APIs, expecting Claude to say, look, I'm smart enough to kind of give me whatever your unwashed masses are, and I'll do a good job. But no, it actually came back and said it actually prefers cleaner APIs, right? So that made me happy. I don't know whether it's going to be true or not true, but that made me really
another interesting thing I saw at the top of Hacker News this morning was that the system prompt for Claude, somebody hacked it and got it out, and it's actually apparently it's something like 24,000 tokens or something. I forget the number. Huge number of tokens goes into the system prompt, but in it, and I don't remember all the details, but I did see, but there was a preference for more structured inputs and outputs and tool use, which is again, look, the thing about models is that they can do amazing things, and you can always go to this argument that's like, oh, next year's model, we'll be able to do everything. It's like, where we're going, we won't need anything but models, right? I mean,
we won't need you and me.
Exactly.
But we are just talking. It's actually, you say, next podcast we actually have just AI generated talking as Max Headroom here.
Exactly.
Max Headroom.
Yeah.
Our audience may not know what Max Headroom is, but we are old enough to know what Max Headroom is.
Well, you can ask Claude, and I'm sure they'll write a summary for you. But look, I mean, yes, you can always throw more model processing, but there's expense involved, and there is time and latency, and if you put, let's just be very if you're just very pragmatic and you actually just step through it, if I have an API that's poorly described and I throw it in, and I tell any model, I'm actually a very big fan of Claude Sonnet and so on, but what's going to happen? It's going to go and hit that. It's going to hit that, or it's going to do the tool use, right? And it's going to essentially make a guess as to what it's supposed to do. And if it gets it wrong, it's using some form of React model, some form of iteration, and it's like, so keep trying until it gets it right, right? We see this if you go and use any of these agentic models, you see that. And the miraculous part is it does get it right eventually, but it does a number of cycles to get there.
It's just money for Jensen.
It is. Yeah, I mean, nice work if you can get there.
Oh yeah.
But the point is that if you have a well-designed API, then the model is able to get it right the first time. It's able to interpret the results in a structured way. It's able to verify those. And the software is able to get on with its task. The end result for the user is that it gets completed faster, more accurately. They don't have to sit there thinking what's going on with this. The model is able to do what it does best. Costs are able to be contained and accuracy is preserved. And I think from a production system standpoint, that there's no question that you're going to want well-defined APIs, well-designed APIs that are going to couple with the model. It doesn't make sense to introduce more of any more unpredictability to the agent that's necessary. Right?
Yes. But the final point here, and I've got another
Yeah, yeah.
topic. The final point here, though, is that people who build systems take a lot of care in building human interfaces.
Yes.
Okay, so you don't just randomly throw an interface. My belief is people actually put in more care in their human interfaces than they do in their APIs. Okay, we have seen this.
Yeah.
We have seen this, right? You could love the interaction paradigm, but underneath the covers, it's really, really messy. And therefore, if that is well curated, then an agent should be able to traverse that if it has got a good model,
Oh, absolutely.
right? So I think that this debate on whether you need kind of well curated APIs for agents, with agents being kind of a new user, or whether we can actually leverage what has been built for humans. Okay, I think that debate will continue for some time. There are really smart people that I respect who have said that this use of human interfaces is a transition. Okay, and eventually, if agents really take off, then this will become less and less important, and therefore you will have kind of APIs designed for.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. No, we're on the same page on that. I think that the primary.
No, I'm not saying I'm on that.
Well, no, I actually do think that new APIs will be, and actually I think that APIs. So first of all, I do think that the evolution of applications will be more towards capabilities that are expressed through APIs and through MTP and so on.
Totally
and,
aligned.
and then you'll have purpose-built agents as the plane of glass, so to speak. And I think where this will happen will be in the domains where the usage patterns are more ad hoc versus more prescribed. So you and I grew up in a software development world where you would go and look at the critical user journeys and the happy path and try to figure out, okay, and in product management, we have the adage of 80% features, like what is it, the capability that 80% of your users need, right? And this works really well where I'm using a desktop application. I'm using a web app. My goal is I do this, I do in this, and my goal is to optimize that, right? We talk about how many clicks to an outcome and all that. And that's great. But it doesn't work so well in more ad hoc domains. And for example, like business intelligence. It's people are coming in and it's like some question of trying to figure out, okay, how do we maximize revenue around? So this thing that literally comes out in more of a conversation and it's very ad hoc. Very hard to go and just have wire a thing, right? And so the agents excel at translating an ad hoc request into a series of actions.
Yeah.
But the point is that over time, I think those things blur and unify, and it's the model, or the agent, excuse me, not the model, that adapts to the user. Um, we as software developers and product designers and so on, and API designers, our audience is the model. The model is going to, this agent is going to be the middleman, the interpreter between what the user wants to achieve and the capabilities that we surface.
Middle person. We don't yet know what gender we should assign this agent.
Middle person
Absolutely. Okay. Hey,
or the middle agent.
middle agent. Oh, yeah. Oh, actually, that is
I mean, that's the definition of an agent.
Yeah. Absolutely. So now we are back to old trading days in which there is an intermediary out there.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I got it. Hey, listen, we have a few minutes left. So Ed, first of all, these conversations are awesome. We are talking as partners, but also as people who are kind of not just looking after the data stacks or IBM interests, but trying to understand what it means for enterprises and AI and everything else. But really, hopefully soon, you'll be a part of IBM, and the kinds of course, getting a chance to interact with you even more is really exciting. That's the last time I'll praise you. But the kind of stuff that DataStax brings to table with respect to its capabilities, not just the capabilities on the data side, the vector store side, the unstructured side, but also Langflow and others are really, really exciting for us. And that was one of the reasons that we were very excited of getting a chance to work with all of you. And I know you had a lot to do with kind of moving from kind of just pure data story to how data and AI kind of come together, Ed. And I'm looking forward to continuing those discussions and helping our enterprise customers with capabilities from both IBM and data.
Yeah, we're very excited about it too. And this is great. And hopefully we'll get a lot more podcasts, if nothing else, out of it.
No. Hey, listen, we need to get some business out of it too. Okay.
Yes.
Hey, with that, thank you very much. This was awesome. And the floors are, of course, buzzing, but here we are in a very, very quiet studio, so you don't get that sense.
Yep.
But thank you very much. We also have a few people in the audience, so thank you so much. And thank you, folks. Okay?